44th and Giles, KOZ and Bellevue, Omaha, Council Bluffs. Friday, the final day of the week. These are the voyages of the program Unsportsmanlike Conduct. Its ongoing mission to explore strange new movies, to seek out new bits and new edification, to boldly go where no radio program has gone before. Elkent's Movie Club. It's Elkent's Movie Club. Elkent's Movie Club. It's Elkent's Movie Club. And we are live on 1620 The Zone TV, our YouTube channel, with Kent Wolgamott of the Lincoln Journal-Star. Hello, Kent.
Hello.
Of course, I'm looking forward more to next week's movie club. Because, I've already got my weekend planned out.
The Many Saints of Newark.
Because
let's go.
I got to watch Iowa and Maryland tonight. And, of course,
Yes.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are going to be packed. But tonight, after the Iowa-Maryland game, is when I'm going to sit down.
Nice.
And I'm going to get my Sopranos game right.
Nice.
I am looking forward to it. You haven't watched it yet, Kent, have you?
I have not.
It is
Are you going to go see it in theaters, or are you going to watch it on HBO Max?
I am probably going to go see it in the theater if I can.
Nice. Awesome.
It is out in theaters. It's also on HBO Max. But this week, Nick has chosen for us the biodoc of Michael Schumacher, 7-time Formula E driving champion. And it is streaming on Netflix. It's actually a German film, right? German, because Michael Schumacher is
his
from
family
Germany.
made it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And
did they really?
Yeah. Well,
I didn't know that.
Well, if you watched it to the end, you kind of understand why the family had a big part of it.
Sure. Yeah.
But you know, this is the first time I think we've done a documentary, right? For the movie club.
I think that's
so.
right.
I know.
I think I've reviewed some in the past, like years ago, but not this first doc in the movie club. I think
the one there was the oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of it, but you recommended it last summer. The music festival in Harlem.
Oh yeah, Summer of Soul.
Summer of Soul.
Yeah, we didn't watch.
We didn't officially review it,
yeah.
but that was a really good one. Speaking of documentaries, have you seen Ali yet, Ken?
The Ali, Ken Burns that was on. Yeah, that's excellent.
Yes,
I would highly recommend that. It's on. I think you can still watch it on the PBS website.
Yes, you can. In fact, that's how I watched it. I watched it off the app on my Roku. So it's on if you have the PBS app, you just log into your TV provider and yeah, you can watch the whole thing. But it is fantastic. Well, Nick, this was your pick, Michael Schumacher, who is arguably the greatest driver of all time in Formula One.
Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna worry about spoilers because it's a documentary and it's just what happened.
Though it's interesting you say that, and I'll explain later. But go ahead.
It follows essentially the life of Michael Schumacher, the former GOAT before Lewis Hamilton. Basically, Lewis Hamilton kind of stepped in his place after. But starting in the late 80s, how he came up, he just kind of got thrown into a car because a driver wasn't able to do it. And then he proved himself. And then he got bombarded by all these offers from all these teams. And he just worked his way up, eventually ended up driving for Ferrari, stepped away for a bit. Helped co-found Mercedes, which is the team Lewis Hamilton drives for now, with Niki Lauda, and he unfortunately got into a skiing accident because he was a thrill seeker, and he's more or less been out of the public eye since 2014. That's what it just goes over his life and all of his feats and achievements.
You know, it's interesting. You say getting thrown into a car. That sounds like a plot line from Many Saints of Newark from next week. Someone just getting randomly thrown into a car. It was a joke.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Can I talk about the end? What did you think of that decision, Kent? Because Nick, obviously knew this story of Schumacher. I did not. You're watching it the entire time. I'm wondering, okay, he either died or something bad happened because he never speaks in the present form. It's always the footage from years ago. What did you think of that decision, given that there are hardcore F1 fans like Nick, like yourself, who watched it, and maybe somebody like me who had no idea, and so we were kind of waiting for the ending and what it would bring?
Yeah, that's the if there's a criticism of the film, in my view, it's clearly an authorized movie, which is fine, right? I don't have a problem with that, but I really believe they should have been a little more explicit about what happened to him. And given the fact that you're talking past tense, it's a lot of people talk about him in the past tense. They should at some point have made it pretty clear that he was still alive, even though and you could have done that. And I would agree with that, because obviously I knew what had happened, but the reality of the matter is, until 2 weeks ago when this came out, that's the first time that his wife and family have actually talked about what's going on with him.
Yeah.
They have been very, very quiet about it. And apparently he is, as she said, here but not the same. And he's done a few things, but that's why you don't see him. I don't imagine he is in a position to, do the interview. And I'm guessing that if you saw him, you might be kind of horrified because of the ramifications of the injury. And I do think they should have made it more explicit at the end as to what happened to him, because all they had was those news clips, right, that were saying he's in critical condition, but they didn't say why, and they didn't say that he was, I mean, I know this, but he was in a coma, medically induced coma, for a considerable amount of time, like months, I believe. And I think they could have said that, but I suspect the family didn't want those details in the movie, and you make compromises when you do a authorized kind of movie. But beyond that, I thought this was very well done. And I learned some things that I didn't know about him, and kind of enjoyed the whole way it was set up, in that it didn't have 8,500 people saying he's the greatest driver of all time. It just told his story, right? And and I also found it pretty charming to watch the stuff about him as a little kid and winning the go-kart races and stuff. And I don't know if you've ever raced go-karts, but that's great fun.
Yes, yes, it
yeah.
is.
And you can do this as an adult human. You don't have to be 8 to race a go-kart around.
I was prepared because, as I mentioned in the outset, I've just gotten done watching the Ali doc from Ken Burns, and I was about to grade this documentary on a curve, because it's hard to go from who arguably might be the greatest documentarian ever to anything else, especially when it's in the same genre, sports. I had, even though I had forgotten what had happened to Michael Schumacher. I'm watching this entire documentary. I had forgotten about the skiing accident. And then when they showed, and they obviously they don't have video of the accident, but it was when they told the story of the accident, I was like, oh yeah, he had a skiing accident. But I had just assumed that, he was okay. I really, I remember him having the accident, but then I just kind of tuned out. And so really, to me, the end was almost like a swerve.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't, even though I knew a lot of not a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, but I was familiar with Michael Schumacher, and I'd watched him race, and I knew about the 7 championships, and then the skiing accident happened. And I was like, oh, but because so I was watching this entire documentary expecting that Michael's going to show up at the end.
Me too.
To finish his story. Because as you pointed out, Nick, he tells, you hear his voice, but it's from prior interviews. And so I anticipated that we would see him at the end and he would, kind of put the bow on the story. But then, you put the context clues together and you hear from his wife and she's very emotional. You're like, oh, wait, he can't really be a part of telling this story. So in a way, I shouldn't say it made the documentary better, because I don't know if that's the right way to put it. But for me, it kind of changed my view on it, because it did give me a kind of a swerve at the end that I had forgotten about.
And that may have been the entire intent of the filmmaker as well. Because remember, documentaries are not journalism, right? They have a point of view. They are telling the story in their fashion. They're not just the facts kind of thing. And that may have been the entire intent of the film. Two things that I thought about during the movie. Well, actually three. One is we should have watched Senna first and then this one.
Yeah.
Right? Because the Senna documentary is really quite good. And I guess no spoilers for those who don't know. Anton's
Ayrton
Senna was the dominant force in Formula One right before Schumacher, and he died in a race that this movie sets up saying he was trying to catch Schumacher and died. Well, the track was truthfully dangerous, and he was not the only person that crashed on that corner on that day, and they tried to stop. The drivers didn't want to race, and they went ahead or some of them didn't had the race, and he died. And they show that scene. They show his crash in this movie, which triggered another thought that is not necessarily relevant to the narrative of this movie, but Nick will get this, how much the cars have changed.
Oh, absolutely.
In 20 years, right? If that accident happened today, he would have walked away from it, I'm guessing.
I've seen accidents worse than that just this season, and they walk out just fine.
Yeah, it is amazing, even though racing was safer in the 90s than it was in the 50s, how much more advance has been since from the 90s to present day. Did the filmmakers, because you mentioned it, there was a fatality in that same corner that same weekend, and the drivers did not want to race. They were very concerned. And of course, that's part of the Schumacher documentary. Should they have done more with that in this story? Because I thought that was a very important part of that whole weekend.
Okay, here's my guess. My guess is that they had more in there, and this was a 2-hour documentary. And my guess is that it played on television in Europe, not just Netflix. My guess is they also sold it to TV just by looking at the production credits. And so it was a 153-minute documentary, which if you're selling it to TV, some kind of pay cable or public television type thing, that's a 2-hour film. So my guess is there might have been a little bit more in there and that it got cut out because in a sense it really wasn't his story, his story per se.
Sure.
The other thing that came across to me, and this is weird, I guess, maybe, or an odd comparison, is I guess I had always thought, well, he was kind of a dirty player in the sense that he, deliberately have accidents to
aggressive
to keep his position and stuff like that. I came out of this thinking, what he really is hyper competitive and will not lose, and I thought of people, and maybe not necessarily the nicest guy in the world when he's competing. And I thought the parallel that came into my mind was Michael Jordan, right? I mean, Jordan was utter jerk, on the court and off a lot of the time, and would not lose. And I think that part of him came across without anybody actually saying it, but that really was something that I got from this that I hadn't known or thought about him beforehand. And I still like those old, we see people driving in the cars all the time nowadays, but those 90s ones with the camera on the helmet where it's moving all over the place, they just got the crap shook out of them.
They certainly did. And that was another thing I took away from it was I had come into this because Formula One's not my usual jam. I just, occasionally I would see it, but obviously I was aware of all of the stars. I was aware of, a lot of the stories. I came into this thinking that Schumacher was more like a Jimmy Johnson, just a steady.
The football coach?
No, Jimmy Johnson, the NASCAR champion, who ironically also had, or coincidentally also has 7 championships. But, more of the steady Eddie, non-controversial, all this stuff. But you're right, Kent. He was
a jerk.
He was almost more towards Dale Earnhardt, rubbing his racing, banging and beating, which you can't do in open wheel racing because, as we saw in the wreck that he had when he was leading the race by an entire lap,
that one was incredible.
Rear ends the guy in second place that he is trying to put a lap down. I'm like, dude, why aren't you just slowing down? You're in the rain. But this guy, to go to your point, Kent,
wired a certain way.
It was go, go, go. And he basically took himself out trying to blow out the rest of the field.
And then wanted to go beat the guy up that he ran into.
Yes, and then he was mad at the guy he rear-ended.
Yeah, Kent, when you said what you did a few minutes ago, that was the same thing that I thought of. And I mentioned on the show a few times, but I rewatched The Last Dance at some point over the summer. And so I've had Michael Jordan on my brain again, and that competitive fire of just being a complete a-hole. And so I wondered if if you thought it was a good representation of, I guess, how we acted, on a day-to-day or race-to-race basis, because they also, there was that one kind of little interlude where it mentions he gets away and he's going and he's spending time with his family and friends, right? And he's playing games and they're drinking and he's rarely talking about sports or racing. He's very, very rarely working out. And so I thought that this one certainly did try to also paint him as he was also a good guy who, when he was on the track, he was one way, but when he was off the track, he was a completely different person.
And I think that might actually be the case with him. I mean, I felt that was pretty honest portrayal of him, honestly.
Yeah, and especially for a family approved documentary.
And I don't think he was never, they said never apologized for anything, right?
Yeah.
That was the other thing. It was like, screw y'all. I'm gonna, I'm here to win.
So what's really interesting to me is you're talking about how stubborn and competitive Michael Schumacher is. His son Mick, he races in Formula One right now. It's his first season. And he doesn't come across that way at all. He's kind of wholesome. He's still young, and they talked to him in the documentary. And he said he wants more than anything just to be able to talk to his dad on now the level of a Formula One driver. It's interesting that Mick seems like it's such a contrast from Michael as far as some of the competitiveness goes. Because he's still, if you ask any of the people in the garage, they say that Mick is like his father, where he got to know everyone in the garage. He's got a really close relationship, knows all their names, and is very kind to the people in his garage. But he's also not intentionally trying to strong arm people on the racetrack as well.
And you wonder if some of that might have been instilled in him had his dad not had that accident.
I was thinking the same thing.
He was a little boy. He was what would you guess? Is he about 20 now?
Yeah, he's about 19 or 20.
Yeah, I looked it up. He was 14 years old when it happened.
Okay. So, yeah, give dad 4 or 5 years to, instill some of that in him, and he might be a tad more aggressive than he is now. I thought I thought that those scenes with the family were actually pretty moving, at the
At
end.
the very end.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the kids don't show up until basically what we would call Act 3. I mean, most of the time it's former team managers,
And
it's
his
crew
wife.
members, it's his wife, it's rival racers, but the kids don't show up until the end.
And once again, I think that's intentional by the filmmakers, because the family has guarded this so privately, right? And frankly, the kids wouldn't have had a hell of a lot to say about when he was at his peak, because
They're so
they
little.
were with
babies.
us. They were little kids, right?
Yeah.
They might remember going to a race, but I can't imagine they took them to races when they were like a year old or 2 years old. Maybe they did, but I can't, And the other thing that this movie captured that I think is important in a way is just the whole milieu of Formula One and how different it is. It's very, European, but we don't, you look at IndyCar, NASCAR, whatever here, and there's no nationalism involved in it, right?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, Schumacher going to Ferrari, I remember, was a big deal because he's a German guy driving for the Italian company. But, you had all the nationalism, and you have the sort of the way these teams work. This stuff is, you think NASCAR is expensive. Formula One is unbelievably expensive.
Yeah.
And so, you wreck one of those cars and you've blown up like 25 million bucks or some ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah, these are basically fighter jets.
They call the drivers pilots.
Yeah.
So it really shows that, maybe not at the same level it is today, but it certainly showed that at the level of the 90s, and how, they kind of stole him away from the team, where he got thrown into the car for one race. And then all of a sudden these people are coming to get him, and then he has some success, and then they're behind the scenes, get him to go to Ferrari. And, that you don't really see, in a sense, as overtly, I guess, here, right? And maybe more about it. But, and then the third thing is, this really fits kind of as, what do you want to call it? Like a stopgap or something for the series that is the next season of what's it called? Drive to
Survive.
Survive, that starts in it's in between series right now.
It's March of next year, I think, is when it comes back.
Yeah. So for those
shooting this season,
they shoot
which
it.
is still going on.
Yeah, this season, what, they have one more? Is there one more race?
Oh, there's like 6 more races.
6 more.
This season?
Yeah, they go till December.
Good Lord. That's a lot.
Well, my sport's better. It lasts most of the year.
All right, settle down, Nick.
It is on
Nick, Lewis Hamilton or Schumacher?
Well,
Earnhardt.
I just started watching Formula One recently, so all I've known dominance-wise is Lewis Hamilton. And I think, just based off of stats alone, Lewis Hamilton has to be. Are you talking about my personal favorite or just like general?
Or who do you think is the
best?
Who's better?
I think it's Lewis Hamilton.
Rated.
The man just is the first Formula One driver to win 100 races this last Sunday, which has never happened. He's done a crap ton for human rights in these places where they race, because a lot of the places they race are very problematic. So he's done a lot for them, as well as a few other drivers. He's knighted. Schumacher
He's
probably could have been knighted too. If
Nick, it's about who's the better driver, not who's knighted.
I'm saying it's Lewis Hamilton.
Okay. Louis.
If he wins this championship this season, which he might not, he'll be the first driver to have 8 championships.
I mean, that'll be hard to beat when you have the most wins and the most championships. That's going to be hard to beat.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But So that is Schumacher. It is on Netflix right now, and you can enjoy it as we did. I did enjoy it. I
liked it.
Like I said, I learned a lot more than I had already known. And then, with the whole accident, it was kind of a swerve for me because I had completely forgotten that.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
And it's a new movie. It's only been out a couple weeks.
Just 2 weeks?
Yep.
The 15th.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, next week, the Many Saints of Newark.
Let's go. Yeah, Kent, somebody was critical of you, and I'm not going to stand for this slander from John. He says, why in the hell would anyone want to go to a movie theater to watch a movie that you can watch at home? Movie theaters are horrible. Listening to 50 other people eating popcorn with their mouths open is not enjoyable to me. Maybe John has better hearing than I do, because when I go to movie theaters, I don't hear popcorn being munched on.
I don't.
Yeah, team movie theaters, especially for a movie like this. I'm going to try to see this one in the
My boys
theater.
went to see a movie yesterday, and they brought home some of the movie theater popcorn. Guess who had the leftover movie theater popcorn?
Yeah,
It was I did. So yeah,
Nice.
team
And
movie theater.
Here's a free tip. If you don't want to be in there, try 2:00 in the afternoon.
There you go.
You'll be
No
in
one
there
wants
all
to
by
talk
yourself.
too.
Yep.
There's a very good chance that I'll go to like an 11 a.m. screening of this one day next week, and I'll be the only person in the theater.
See, that's how you
There you
do
go.
it.
Well, now
That's
that
what you
Kent said
do.
it, everyone's going to go at 11 now.
And sit down next to him and munch on popcorn with their mouths open.
Thanks, Ken. You told everyone the secret.
That'd be everybody in Lincoln, right? So
Yes, yeah, Lincoln. All right. Well, it's prediction time. It's homecoming, Kent, and it's a night game. I know how much you enjoy night games.
Oh, the very best. At least it's 6:30. I mean,
That's true.
I'll take the 6:30 over a 7:30.
That's true. Good call.
But yeah, it's still a lovely night game, and I think it could be raining. Yeah.
Yeah. Gross.
So
Even
what do you
better.
like? What do you like?
What do I like? I'm going Nebraska 20, Northwestern 17, and that would be Nebraska scoring 3 touchdowns and missing an extra point.
I like the specificity
Yeah,
of the
'cause-
prediction.
Because
That's-
people
I
are going
don't
to
think they're
touchdowns and a
capable of
couple
kicking
field
2
goals.
field goals.
Yeah, 2
You coulda
touchdowns
gone-
and 3 safeties.
You could have gone 10 safeties, Kent.
10 safeties.
2 touchdowns and a doink.
Yeah.
6 field goals and a safety. Yeah,
Well,
there's a
all
lot of
right,
options there.
Enough of this nonsense. Let's get the real pick from Evil Kent.
I could see 52-38 or something like that. Probably Nebraska.
Evil Kent is a moron. He is a moron.
If the 2 teams together score 38 points, I would be flabbergasted.
I'm with you, Kent. I am definitely there with you. All right. Well, have a great weekend, and we'll look forward to next week. We may have to budget several segments because I am gonna pick this movie apart, man. I have been waiting for this for a long time, and I look forward to it. Many Saints of Newark.
Excellent.
All right. See you next week,
See you next
Kent.
week.
Hi, Kent.
Kent Wolgamott of the Lincoln Journal-Star. And by the way, Many Saints of Newark streaming now on HBO Max. Or, as Kent has indicated, he will be in the theater. It is in theaters right now.
HBO Max Verstappen. Formula Fridays coming out tonight.
Good.
All right, back to football. We need to get back to football. That was a lot of racing conversation.
I think we need more of it.
A lot of it.
Well, we've got a lot of good college football this weekend that we need to get to, and we'll do
Yes,
that
we do.
next before a One Beer Friday on 1620 The Zone.
The ultimate fall tailgate getaway.